Hello everyone, welcome back to the kitchen table. Today on the kitchen table, I've been out to take my daughter to school this morning, and it's actually the first properly cold morning of the year here, and it's reminded me that it's probably a good time to go over a few little tips about getting ready and prepped up for winter flying, especially as there might well be a lot of you out there who've, Phantom 3 is your first kind of larger size drone, excuse me, and this might be the first kind of winter that you're dealing with. By the way, if you're in the southern hemisphere, then you're getting ready for barbecues and beach parties, and move along, nothing to see here. But for the rest of us poor souls up in the north, let's talk about winter. But before we do that, it's the kitchen table. I need a warming beverage. So sadly, it's the morning though, so I can't get anything of a hard liquor nature to warm me up. So I've got my usual go-to at the moment, the Monsoon de Malabar coffee. So cheers. Yes, winter flying. We're approaching it into winter, temperatures are getting lower, and winter can give you some really fantastic opportunities for some amazing, particularly amazing aerial photography. You get those high pressure, bright, crisp, cold winter days with that pale blue sky and the pale yellow sun, and just you can get some really awesome photo ops really with your drone. So winter flying can be great. Also, cold air is denser than warm air, and so you might actually notice a very tiny performance boost as well. You might notice that your Phantom might be a little bit zippier, climbs a bit quicker than usual, just because the props have got more air to bite on. But there are a few things that I think it's worth bearing in mind as we come into winter flying season. The first thing to talk about is batteries. LiPo batteries operate at their optimum power delivery when they are not cold. At least room temperature, and up to a bit warmer. Warmth is kind to batteries. They will give up their maximum capacity when they are warm. Cold batteries do not give up all that they have. So my top tip is, if you're flying and you've got multiple batteries, don't leave your fully charged spares in the flight case or outside in that cold air. Stick them in a pocket, pants pocket, or a coat pocket, or inside coat pocket, somewhere it's close to you. At least try and keep them sort of warm with body heat. Hold them in your hand or keep them in your car if that's warm. Don't leave them out, and then you'll get the sort of optimum power delivery. Now, your mileage might vary, but I have certainly noticed it when I've been flying, when it's hovering around or below freezing, noticeable reduction in flight times with cold batteries. So, that's something, you can imagine you're flying away on one battery for 20 minutes and your others are sitting there getting colder and colder and colder. They're not going to give you optimum. So I'd keep those warm. Now, the DJI rates its aircraft as a package down to -10 centigrade. Now, that means it should perform down to -10, but perform is different from, optimum. I still think it's definitely worth, if you're flying in lower temperatures, keep those guys warm. The other thing that you need to watch out for in winter flying is moisture. And I'm not just talking about flying in falling snow. You get days now where you're going to get fogs, heavy dews and frosts in the morning. And, as you know, these things are not IP rated. They don't enjoy water. They have some strategically placed holes that will allow moisture straight into the very expensive circuitry inside. So you need to watch out for that. One of the main issues, and I've suffered from it as well, there is a connector for your gimbal right under there. And if you're going to take off on longish grass or anything like that, this is pretty close to that, and moisture can quite easily go up in there. If you find that your gimbal fails, and that's what you've been flying at, then you can just carefully take that out. Use some alcohol to swab it, or use a sort of proprietary electronic cleaner to make sure you don't get any rust in there, and put it back in. So I would recommend that for winter flying, don't take off on damp and wet surfaces. Use something down there. You may have seen in the video where I did the Inspire one, Jack had a landing mat. Now that's from Bestham USA. I can't recommend that at all for guys in the UK. The shipping on it is ridiculous. It's far too heavy. But if you're in the US, they do this really kind of dense rubber landing mat for $50 or $60. I can't quite remember, but I'll put a link down below. Have a look at those. Or if it's a flat surface, take a tarp, lift off from your flight case, something like that. Keep it away from the moisture. The other moisture issue you could get is fog. Now, people love flying through mist and fog. You get those wonderful shots where you come up and you see people taking views of the tendrils of fog kind of working their way through trees and all that kind of stuff. And that's brilliant, but just watch out because it will condense onto your aircraft. And again, if you're flying through too much high moisture content, you don't want too much condensation getting into the inside. It's going to cause you a problem. Speaking of condensation, the other thing you've got to watch out for, which I have encountered but only once, but I know others who fly in quite cold places have come across a fair bit, is icing. And this is something that full-scale pilots of helicopters and of aeroplanes need to watch out for. It's prop icing. Now, kind of one of the ways that airfoils and props work is that there's a pressure differential, and because the way it is shaped, it causes a lower pressure area on the top surface. And where you have a drop in pressure, you can actually have a significant drop in temperature as well. And that can cause a thin layer of ice to start to build up if there is lots of moisture in the air. Now, it doesn't sort of happen instantaneously, but keep an eye on it. If you're flying in high humidity and low temperatures and you notice that perhaps, your lift performance is getting a bit odd, or you can hear the Phantom having to rev harder to maintain its altitude, come down straight away and just check, because there will be a point if you leave it that the ice will build up and ruin the profile, and you could get into some serious serious problems. It doesn't have to be below freezing either, because that low pressure will drop the air temperature. It just needs to be a low air temperature, under 5 degrees. So one thing to watch out there. Anywhere where you're in those conditions, high humidity, lower temperatures. And the last thing really is a bit of self-protection. I get very cold hands when I'm flying in winter, and it is a pain. So a good pair of gloves is pretty essential. Now, if you're a if you're a thumb on the top of the sticks flyer, then maybe a good pair of ski mitts you could get away with, and maybe as proper mittens because you don't need your fingers. But the thing to remember is that you might, if you've got a Phantom 3 or 2, or you're using a phone app, you may want to use some gloves that have one of those special finger pads for using on touch screens. Because you will find you don't want to keep taking your glove off to adjust settings. The Phantom 3 controller is good because some of those settings you can adjust with the buttons and the wheels on the controller, which is great. But even so, sort yourself out with a good pair of gloves. I tried doing it. I like to have a feel of things, so I tried it without gloves, and it's just very, very painful and a horrible experience. So there we are, just a brief set of tips on winter flying. Like I said, great photo opportunities coming up in the Northern Hemisphere. Enjoy it, but just keep an eye out for some of those potential hazards that we mentioned. And yeah, thank you very much. I hope you found that useful. Thanks as ever to everyone who supports the channel, whether you've bought a supporter mug, whether you become a channel patron or PayPal donor, or use any of the links down below that all send a few pennies our way. I really appreciate it. And have fun, fly safe, and we'll see you soon back on the kitchen table. Cheers.